Josh Hart and the New York Knicks have agreed to a 4-year extension, and we are going to get right into it. Welcome to Knicks Digest. My name is Chris, and we finally have some Knicks news. This has been a slow summer outside of the Dante DiVincenzo signing. We haven't seen much, but now we finally have something to talk about, and that is Josh Hart signing a 4-year, $81 million extension with the New York Knicks that will kick in after this season, keeping him in a Knicks uniform until 2028. And I am so excited for this. Josh Hart has had a great impact on the Knicks. He was so important to the team's success, both in playoffs and the regular season, as we saw as when the Knicks traded Cam Reddish and that first round pick for him, they went on to go for 9 straight wins. And they turned from a team that was hovering around the play-in to a team comfortably in the playoffs. And that is a lot to do with the fact that they brought in someone who they needed. They brought in a guy who was there to do all the dirty work. He's a bulldog type of player. He is here to not be afraid of anyone or anything. He works his ass off and he wants to win. This is a guy who puts winning above everything else. He's played many different roles in his career, whether it was with Portland where he averaged 20 points a game, being the main piece acquired for CJ McCollum in the Pelicans deal. And then on the Knicks, he showed that he was just there to do the dirty work and be great for the chemistry. So let's talk about what he's been doing with the Knicks so far. If you look at Josh Hart's stats, he averaged 10 points, 8 rebounds, 4 assists, and 1 steal per game while shooting 37% from beyond the arc. That is a very impressive resume, and though yes, people are going to be upset about the money, I'm really not. I'm thrilled about this contract. It's about exactly, maybe a little more than what I figured the Knicks were going to give him. But we knew this was going to happen. We knew he was going to get extended. We knew the Knicks were not going to just let him walk. And especially after he opted in, there was pretty much an indication that they might give him a little more money than maybe a player with those stats and that resume would deserve. And that's because he did the Knicks a favor. He was expected to opt out, as I said, on Taylor Rooks' show. He said that he was going to probably go ahead and decline that $12.9 million player option, which he did not do. That surprised us all. We were all wondering why, and it was for the Knicks to have some cap flexibility come free agency, because they didn't have to worry about re-signing him. They knew they would get him on an extension, and they told him that they would get him on an extension. Now, he's finally got it. He's getting his money. He'll be paid up to $94 million by the Knicks once 2028 arrives, and this is a contract to be excited about. He's obviously not a flashy player, he's not a superstar, but he's an excellent role player who does everything right and clearly has an impact on the Knicks' success. Now, when you go into it, when you look at what Josh Hart has accomplished in the NBA, you've seen this guy. The one thing that always sticks out is teams have great chemistry when he's on that team. We saw that young Lakers team. They were all getting along, having fun, streaming video games, and now you see this Knicks team where they're all clicking. Whereas Jalen Brunson said, the vibes are immaculate. Where Josh Hart is in press conferences eating food. Why? Because he just played a basketball game and he worked his ass off and he's starving and it's embarrassing his best friend, Jalen Brunson. We all love it. The guy is built for this. He's built for New York. Because above all else, above all the fun antics, this man is a competitor. He wants to win, and he's the perfect player for a Tom Thibodeau team. The Knicks were missing something going into this season. We all didn't expect how good they would be, but they were really hovering around 500 being a play-in team, and then they traded for Josh Hart. The exact thing they needed, someone who was rough, someone who wasn't afraid of anything, someone who was ready to show up, show out, and do the dirty work that none of the other Knicks were really willing to do. He is an energizer. The Knicks didn't have an energizer who was going to yell at his teammates on the court. really inspire them, and just be there for the team like no one else. The second that he arrived here, he was just that. It's why the Knicks went on that 9-game winning streak. Their vibes had improved. Instead of Cam Reddish, who was openly upset with the Knicks for not playing him, they now had a guy who was thrilled to be back playing basketball on the East Coast like he did in Villanova when he won a championship. This is an awesome signing because it means that throughout the next 5 years, because remember, this kicks in next year. This doesn't kick in this year. For the next 5 years, they're going to have a guy who is here ready to win, ready to throw his body around, ready to put himself on the line every minute of every game, whether he's playing 48 minutes in a playoff game, which we saw this year, or whether he's playing 5 minutes in a playoff game and hyping everyone up on the bench, which we also saw this year. We know this guy is good for team morale. We know he's a good defender. When he was the primary defender on Jimmy Butler in the Eastern Conference semifinals between the Knicks and the Heat, Butler shot 37.5% from the field in general. He didn't make a single three when Hart was guarding him. Obviously, we know Butler's not there for his scoring, but he's a guy who really steps up come playoffs, and he just absolutely was struggling to deal with Josh Hart because Josh Hart was not afraid of him. He was as big as him. Hart's also a big wing, and he's going to be more than that, and that connects to the Obi Toppin trade, because as we saw Obi Toppin get moved for 2 second-round picks. It was sort of a surprising move, definitely a letdown from what he once was at the 8th overall pick, but not everything works out. Obviously, Julius Randle having the breakout season definitely was not helpful for Obi's career, because he spent most of his career with the Knicks on the bench, not getting the opportunities that he deserved as an 8th overall pick, and he was just pretty mismanaged, something that also happened with Reddish, and the Knicks, they didn't get a great return for Obi, and that is what it is. The weird thing is they didn't seem to pick up a backup power forward. Yeah, Isaiah Roby's on the roster, Nathan Knight's on the roster, there are some guys, but not some guys who we're looking at as rotational players. We were really looking for Roby to show something in Summer League, and he wasn't showing out the way that we hoped. He wasn't leading the team the way that we hoped. So now we're seeing a situation where we're going to get Josh Hart as the backup power forward a lot this year. And some people are not going to love that, myself included. I'm not a big fan of this, but I'm also not a big fan of this. Because when you look at Josh Hart, he's got the toughness to make up for the size. As we all know, as Nate Robinson said, heart over height. Obviously, Josh Hart is going to be a smaller power forward for the time that he plays it. Remember, he's not going to be a primary power forward. For the most part, he's going to play shooting guard through power forward. Something that's become way more common nowadays in the NBA because we're in the era of positionless basketball. We're not in this time where every position is its own entity. We're now in a world where there's a point guard, there's a big man, there's a big man, and then there's 4 guys or 3 guys who are really just going to be there to hit shots and play good defense. And shooting guard through power forward has become very similar. The only positions that really stand out are point guard and center, and we're watching as center sort of is having a revolution between Jokic and Embiid and Bam Adebayo, who played well. But at the end of the day, we're not seeing power forwards over 6'8". Now, if you're 6'8", we're seeing a lot of guys that size play center, something we have not seen ever before outside of like the 1950s when that was as tall as people got. When you look at it, 6'8" is now the average size of power forwards. Josh Hart is 6'6". It's not a huge size differential. It's not some massive difference. The only time where it's going to be problematic is against the Cleveland Cavaliers, who obviously start Evan Mobley at the 4. And then maybe the Boston Celtics, depending on what they're going to do with Porzingis. Whether Porzingis is going to play center and Robert Williams is coming off the bench, or maybe Porzingis will play power forward. And as someone who's watched Porzingis a lot, for him obviously being a New York Knick at this time, I think his power forward days are over. So I'm really not that concerned about him playing backup power forward. Also, because when you look at it, Tibbs loves Julius Randle. That's his guy. And Randle absolutely is going to play an absurd amount of minutes, especially now that there's no true backup power forward for Tibbs to give some minutes to. We're going to watch Randle play essentially constantly throughout the game, more like we did in 2021, which again, I don't love, but it's not the end of the world when you look at Josh Hart as a backup power forward. We'll also see RJ Barrett do it a little bit. But I really love this signing because it gives the Knicks their guy back who is their hard worker, who's their junkyard dog, who's that guy who's not afraid of everything, who's helping team morale, who's doing all the unspoken things that don't show up on the stat sheet. They were blatantly missing that, and it's why they were a 500 team for the first half of the season, and then once they acquired Josh Hart, they broke right out of that area and instantly became a playoff contender. It's very reminiscent of when they needed a point guard who could score the ball in 2021, traded Dennis Smith in a second rounder for Derrick Rose. Derrick Rose comes in, plays the sixth man, and the Knicks go on to be a fourth seed. Obviously, that did not work out as well, but that was a much less talented team compared to now, and they covered their one need again, and it worked out great. The Knicks are now a team that could realistically make the Eastern Conference Finals. I don't think they would be that without Josh Hart. I think he has that much of an impact to this team. So yes, maybe it's a little bit of an overpay. $81 million for a guy who's averaging 10 points and 8 rebounds. Maybe not the craziest thing in the world. But it's a lot of money. But to finish this video off, I will say the Knicks are already in cap hell. Signing Josh Hart to this deal is not going to change much about them being in cap hell. So I don't see the real impact here on the cap space. It's better to overpay a guy a little bit than to completely lose him, especially because they told him they would pay him. They told him they would pay him. It's why he opted into his deal. And if he opted out, the Knicks probably would have paid him a little less, but he did them a solid, so they did one back. Because they wanted to bring in DiVincenzo, they wanted a little more cap flexibility, and Josh Hart did not have to say yes. He could have said, no, I'm opting out. I'm testing the waters. Maybe someone will pay me more than you, and I'll walk. But he didn't do that. And every team needs a Josh Hart type player who does all the little things, who rounds out a team well. Every NBA Finals team has that. To go back to the most recent example, look at the Denver Nuggets and look at how Bruce Brown played for them. Bruce Brown was a necessity to that team. I know some people will disagree, but he was. Every team has that guy who's going to do all the little things, who's going to muscle people around, not have a single bone in his body that's afraid. It's something that every successful team needs, and something the Knicks were missing and now have back for the foreseeable future. The Knicks now have Josh Hart from his age 28 season to his age 33 season. So they're getting prime Josh Hart. We don't know what that's going to look like because, as I said, he's been a few different players throughout his career, whether he's more scorer-focused or more defensive-focused like he was with the Knicks and with the Lakers. We've seen a few different versions of this guy, but what we know is that he helps out the chemistry, and he has a direct impact on winning, and he is always, always willing to guard the best player on any other team. He really is the perfect Tibbs guy. He's a great guy to have off the bench. He's got great chemistry with the team. As we all know, the Nova Knicks are in full force, one Infinity Stone away, and Josh Hart, as we know, openly tampers on Twitter and is now his FIBA teammate. I'm obviously talking about Mikal Bridges, but I digress. That's a story for another day. Thank you so much for tuning in to Knicks Digest. Make sure to smash this like button and subscribe. Josh Hart told me that if you guys smash this like button, if you guys subscribe to this video, he'll play even better next year. I have no proof that he said that to me, but you can't prove that he didn't say that to me. So, make sure to do that and help Josh Hart have his best season yet. Guys, I cannot wait for this season. We are going to have a full year of this team. This is an exciting basketball team, and it is going to be a great year to be a New York Knicks fan. And I'm happy they got this deal done. I'm happy that we're going to see Josh Hart in the orange and blue for the considerable future. So thank you so much for tuning in. I'll catch you guys next time on Knicks Digest. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you next time.